I talk to a lot of people that have started companies and they've bootstrapped it and they really don't know what's going on and they're figuring it all out. And you, with your MBA and the incredible experience that you've had, I'd love to kind of talk about what you did prior to coming into this role that you're in now, and a little bit about how you view business.
I'm probably more of a risk taker than not. For me, the first business that I started, I bootstrapped it. I call it financing your own dream.
Hi, I'm Candy Valentino, and for the last 25 years, I've been building businesses and generating wealth, starting my first business when I was just 19. Since then, I've gone on to build, scale, acquire, and exit businesses, all while investing in real estate and building financial freedom. Now it's all about you and why we're bringing you the real story behind building businesses and generating wealth here at the Candy Valentino Show. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Candy Valentino Show. I am so excited for you to be able to listen into this conversation. I bring you a lot of business leaders and self-starters and investors and people that have done incredible things in their lives. But today I get to not only interview one of those incredible people that have done epic things in her life, but also somebody that I consider a friend. So thank you so much, Tamala, for being here with us.
Thank you, Candy, for having me. It's a pleasure.
You have such an incredible background, and we actually met in your new life with Dress for Success. But I want to talk about what you've done, because that's what I was saying before we hit record, that I talk to a lot of people that have started companies and they've bootstrapped it and they really don't know what's going on and they're figuring it all out. And you, with your MBA and the incredible experience that you've had, I'd love to kind of talk about what you did prior to coming into this role that you're in now, and a little bit about how you view business. Because you talk a lot about business now, you're teaching. I was texting you the other day, you're like, I'm about walking in to teach. So can you tell me a little bit about your philosophy of business and maybe a little bit unpack what were the first businesses that you started?
When you talk about philosophy of business, I think, we learn that through modeling. So my father was an entrepreneur like yours, and I learned a lot about business by just being with my dad, on the job, what he did, how he thought. He was a back of the napkin kind of guy. He could come up with a vision, write it down, and then strategically execute that. And that's really how I learned, by watching him. So I never really had that kind of fear. I'm probably more of a risk taker than not. Because that's what I saw, and I saw success in that. So for me, the first business that I started, I bootstrapped it. I call it financing your own dream. So I had to figure it out, and I really did it. My background, I have 30 plus years of healthcare operations in finance and risk. So my first business was consulting in risk in healthcare. So I took what I had learned, all the training that I had, and then I put my own shingle out, and I had connections, had, a network, and that's how I started. And I was extremely busy, very busy. So it worked out well. But what I learned is I'm only one person. And so a lot of times I think women go into business, but they don't have an understanding about scaling, how to scale that. And then it's all based upon us. And then we're trying to juggle family and kids and, being there. And I think at first it's a little flattering that they only want me. They only wanted me. Oh, we really just want you to be there, Tamala, until you figure out you've got to sleep. You have other things you need to do, and it's just not possible. So I learned a lot. I learned the hard way, and through exhaustion. It's one thing to make money. It's another thing to be able to enjoy it.
Amen.
But if it's all on your back, you really don't ever get to let down. So I think the second time I launched another business, I thought that through a little differently. I hired 1099s, hired other consultants to be able to do the work. I'd expanded my network some. And I think that was a much better way for me to approach it than before. So a little training in between, right? You said my past life and then my education. So I was able to apply some of that in business, but you can't teach some of it, right, Candy?
Yeah.
Some of it's just pure guts and metal and what you're made of and what you can stomach and what you can get through. But the things that I could learn and apply beyond my skill set, I just tried to do that. I talked to people, I interviewed people, I probably begged a little bit,
Please.
to get that knowledge, and through mentors to get the knowledge. But I would say for women in business, it's just a much different playing field.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because starting even just 25 years ago in business, the landscape for female entrepreneurs has drastically changed. I feel like we still have a ways to go, but it's really shifted. And you starting, not just a female, but of color. Did you have representation? Did you see other women doing it? I mean, I know for me, when I learned the stat that less than 2% of female entrepreneurs break their first $1 million, or I think it was 2 million in revenue. And I was like, wow, like we can focus on the 98% that don't ever get there, or we can focus on the 2% and try to be included into that. Did you have representation in that regard as well, or people that you looked up to?
I had people that I looked up to, but honestly, no. I'll just say no.
Yeah.
I would say in the business world, I had some representation, but so much of my training came from men. Just came from men, and just came from me getting in there and asking questions and, trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Do you feel that? Because I feel that way too. Because I was fortunate years into business. I was included in a women's president's organization once I was, but prior to that, it was like my friends were going to college and getting married and having babies. And I kind of felt like alone on an island a lot of times. Do you feel that you had to develop a different muscle to be taken seriously by men, to have those conversations? And do you look at that as something that was a hindrance, or has that actually helped you in your journey?
I have a strange personality, Candy, and doubting me fuels me. So somebody that, I've walked into rooms before, I've walked into conference rooms, and I wasn't who they expected. And so just to watch that expression of, and trying to figure out, one, I'm a woman of color, and I'm at the table with the CEOs and the decision makers. And then the fact that I sort of have their business in my hands from a risk perspective, their liability, they're depending on me to advise them from a liability standpoint. So quickly, I've watched people adjust very quickly to be able to accommodate that. I've also seen men struggle with it. I had one man, I was in DC, I walked into a business that we were reviewing for liability for risk. I represented the major insurance companies at that time in healthcare. And he was the plant engineer. My meeting was with the plant engineer. I would go in and inspect boilers and chillers and, all of that, front to back, right? That business operation. And he came out, said hello, and laughed and said, "Oh, I didn't realize they let women do this job." Well, you're going to find out today. Maybe they didn't let me, maybe I decided to do this. And by the time he found that out, but, I've walked into all kinds of scenarios like that. And to me, it's just humorous. And after a point, I check, okay, we know where you stand, but I'm going to do my job. So I've tried not to move through life with a chip on my shoulder, whether it's about gender or race. It just, I've never led with that.
Instead, what do you feel you lead with?
Me. I lead with my knowledge. I lead with my skill sets. I lead with my personality too, a lot of times. And I think it's just something my parents instilled in me. My mother always instilled in us that we should be able to communicate, as she would say, from the poorhouse to the White House. Doesn't matter who it is. We don't judge based upon who we're interacting with, but we learn how to be respectful and how to communicate and how to also communicate our skills and our knowledge in a way that others can understand and that your message can resonate with whom you're talking to. So I think I'm always conscious of that. I'm conscious of that in a room. I always feel like I want people to be comfortable, but I haven't always been.
Sure. Yeah.
So I just think some of that sort of fueled me to go on to the next level. I will say this, though, because I worked in my field for so long prior to starting my own business, I had built credibility and I had built trust. So my network grew word of mouth because people, knew me or had experienced that. So that does help. And
Yeah.
sometimes I think as women, we skip that step, but I think it's important.
Do you think that being, I feel like sometimes when you walk into a room, people don't expect much from you, right? Like it's kind of like that. Like, do you ever feel that along your journey? It's just like, oh, and so I feel like we could either use that as a crutch or a superpower.
You mean like, isn't she cute?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's so
Like,
pretty.
oh,
yeah, really?
who's your husband?
Oh,
Yeah, right.
I've had that too.
Yeah. So do you feel like rather than, because I always feel every situation, right, every adversity, we can use it as a way to cripple us or to really challenge us to rise up.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that you do that maybe you can share for other people that experience that? Whether it's even a young man that walks into a room and isn't expected much of him, or a female or a person of color. Is there something that you can switch that maybe you have done when you walk into those rooms and use that more as a superpower?
Yeah, I think it's preparation. Going into a room prepared. Never feel like you are entitled to be in that room. Be ready to prove yourself. And you don't have to be angry to prove yourself. A lot of times as women, we get that label that if we're fierce and we're good at what we do, then, we've got an attitude or we're angry or something's going on. And I don't feel that's necessary, but I do think preparation is important, because part of the reason, Candy, that we get that kind of response that they don't expect too much is because too many women have gone in before us and they weren't prepared. So then, we almost get judged for what others did before us.
Yeah.
And, we're so much more than how we look. So much more.
And if you think of it, like if you almost remove the emotion from it and you just look at it from human psychology, right? It's like, okay, this person looked like this and they didn't say much of anything. And then you walk into the room and you just happen to fit that same box. And now it's like, oh, like our minds remember that and say, oh, this person must not. So to me, it almost looks as an advantage.
It is.
Like if you see like the blonde girl walking in the room and you don't think much.
Yeah.
Right, it's actually great, because then anything I say is a positive.
Like, I gotcha.
Exactly. So I think it goes back to what you said, like, is if you don't have a chip on your shoulder and you remain humble. And I feel too with you have a lot of emotional intelligence. And I feel like you lead with a lot of EQ. Was that intentional? Was that developed? And how do you translate that into leading teams and people now?
Emotional intelligence in some ways in my family was demanded. So my mother was a mental health nurse, and in administration, my grandmother was a mental health nurse. So we talked about a lot in our families, and sensitivity was important. So it wasn't sensitivity with judgment. It was, oh, okay, this is where you are right now. This is what we do as a family. What do you need? That sort of thing. And I think because that was instilled in me all throughout my life, that it's not hard for me to be empathetic. And, empathy is whether I will listen to you and walk in your shoes. It's not just listening to you and saying, oh, I'm so sorry, Candy, that happened. But am I willing to experience that with you and to feel that and to be empathetic about where you are at the time? So I think I was sort of trained in some ways to do that. I also, we have what's the golden rule, to treat people
the way you
want to be treated. But, my rule is to treat people the way they want to be treated. It might not be good enough the way that I want to be treated for you to feel valuable and to feel needed, and also to feel that you're bringing something to the table.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, I obviously didn't know you in your prior life, but just seeing how you lead the people that you work with and lead the women in your programs. Is there a way that you view, because obviously you had so much risk experience. And I think it's quite interesting that I was like, you're managing all of this risk and now you're working with all of these people that have elements of risk in their life. How did you go from managing risk at all these large corporations to now seeing the humanity side that people deal with risk, and how do you mitigate and minimize that in their life?
Okay, that's a loaded question.
It is.
But I'm thinking, when I think back on it, I've always done this. So even in business, as in operations, so as a healthcare administrator, if there was an employee that I had, someone on the team that wanted to move up, they wanted to go back to school, they needed an opportunity, I was always cognizant of that. My biggest fear as a leader was always that I was going to overlook someone, that someone was, needed that break, or needed someone to support them, and then I might overlook them.
Mm.
So I think now I've taken that so people are people are people. No matter how large the company, no matter how small, we're human.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to make mistakes. We're going to do some things great. We're going to, really suck at other things. It's just, it's just the way it is. It's just human nature. So I always go into it when leading teams. First of all, is to understand the talent I have on my team. I dive in quickly to strengths and weaknesses,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's 3 people or 300.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know. I want to try to figure that part out. And then it's almost like a SWOT analysis.
I was just going to say, do you do SWOT? Yeah. Okay.
Probably in my head
Yeah.
because I've been doing it for so long. So it's almost like a SWOT analysis, and then try to figure out, what do I need to get from point A to point B? Do I have it on the team? If I don't have it on the team, where can I get it?
Mm-hmm.
Where can I acquire that? And then I look at, I try to look at the whole person. I'm smiling because I don't know that I've always done that.
Yeah.
There's times in our careers that we're like,
oh yeah,
gotta get this done.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But now
I wish I can say I always did that, but I didn't.
I'm trying to full transparency.
Yeah.
But now that I'm a little older, a little wiser,
That's right.
I can pause now and know that everything's not going to blow up.
Yeah.
So if I don't make a decision today because I'm not exactly sure which way to go, everything's not going to go down the tubes.
Mm-hmm.
There was a time when you're on that 15-minute drill, like I got to figure this out quickly. So with people and with the team, I try to do the same. That, I want to take into consideration everything that they're bringing to the table, what they have going on as a person, and then try to develop, them from where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because now that's really all I'm about, is developing other people. I'm a leader of leaders. I just try to create and support leaders because that's what we're going, that's what we need.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Because fortunately, I won't be here forever.
Yeah.
But we still got to keep this moving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hear people ask all the time, they're like, well, what if you hire someone and you invest and you lead them and you make them better and they leave? And I think there's a saying, I don't know whose it is. It's a quote that says like, but what if you don't? And they stay, right? Yeah.
I know.
So I think people look at that, like investing their time and resources into leadership is like, oh, but is it going to have an ROI? But if you don't, what's the alternative? Now, this audience loves very tactical things. And I don't know that we've ever, in all of our episodes, ever broke down a SWOT. So if people were just sitting and going, wait, what did they just talk about? And how do I do this with my team? Mm-hmm. Is there maybe just something that you naturally, instinctively do after all of these times that you look at? What are their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, their threats? That there's something that you kind of take them through? Is it individual? Is it a group? You're laughing. This is going to be good.
Oh, you're making me work today. It's all good. It's all good. So I do a SWOT analysis in my head, but I also do it on paper.
Okay.
So if I'm coming into a new team, part of my my former job is you would have called me a hatchet man.
Oh.
So I was licensed in a corporation. So if someone got fired, left, whatever, Tamala, we need you to go into clean it. If their numbers were bad, if performance was poor, customer service was poor, I'd get sent in to clean that up. So not literally hatchet as in firing everyone, but changing it, changing the culture quickly or changing the environment quickly. So I go into every business just like that. So thinking, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What opportunities do we have? And what are the threats? And I usually look at threats based upon a 90-day assessment. And I would say probably, Candy, I go in on a 90-day assessment in my head. Mm-hmm. So I usually can draw a diagram. And then when I interview the team members, I'm writing down, these are strengths. Mm-hmm. This might be a weakness. I'm not sure. You never know what your weaknesses truly are, unless it's something toxic that you pick up on quickly until you've assessed your whole team and your operation.
Yeah.
Because what I feel might be a weakness may be a strength. That employee that always has an opinion, always wants to tell you what they think, always wants you to change what you're doing. You know what I'm talking about. Initially you're like, I don't want to deal with this. But then you find out that's actually a strength because you really need either their historical information or you need some of their expertise and they need to be coached. So some things after the SWOT analysis, then I can make some assessments and then decide how I want to coach the individuals, and then how that will roll up to the team.
And then do you take time when you, after that, like, and have you just coaching them and encouraging them? And how do you kind of like develop? Because I think this is, people can do well in business on their own, but at some point it's people
tough.
and processes.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
if you want to grow, like you gotta, it's people and processes at the end of the day. So,
and accountability.
Yeah, very true.
People, process, and accountability.
So if they're like, okay, I got to this level, I really don't, because leading people, it's a whole other skill set. Like whatever it took you to get to your first million or your second, like that is totally different than now you've got to lead people. It's like you almost have to forget everything you learned to get to this point and relearn all new skills.
That's why I went into business for myself the first time, because you get tired of leading people. You get what goes into it. But I do think that that you have to set a pace, I think, for that. Because to answer the first part of your question, yeah, you hate to invest in someone to lose them. But I started seeing that as a plus. If I've invested in someone to the point that someone else sees their value, then I've done my job. So I just learned to look at it that way, because if not, you get your heart crushed every time somebody leaves you. And when you're in business for yourself, that can take you down in about 6 months. Wouldn't you agree?
I 100% agree.
It's a spiral.
You take it personally.
You do.
Until you have your reps in. Then you know it's not personal. It's more about but man, in the beginning, you take it personally. Like I've probably not made great decisions when it's something, you invested in somebody, you really lead them, you grow them, they're doing fantastic, and then they leave. It's like, wait a minute, like you take it personally, you might not handle it the best way. Right, I was in my 20s, so I definitely didn't handle things the right way back then. But I think that like now, like you said, with wisdom and experience, it's like you understand that you're actually giving that person, even if you have to let somebody go, you're giving them grace to go on their journey, and that not everyone's supposed to be in our lives forever. Sometimes it's just a season.
And sometimes you have to be comfortable with saying, this is just not a good fit.
Right.
Not a good fit for you, not a good fit for me.
Yeah.
There's a way to fire people without demoralizing them.
Yes.
And there's a way to coach also without being critical at a personal level. But you do have to coach on performance. And I think that takes some honesty.
Now, you said you can fire people without having to, dehumanize them. And I definitely have learned that in a very kind way. I actually just let somebody go not that long ago, and actually really loved her as a human, but we're just going in a different direction, and was able to like help her find something else and get her situated. And it was way more work, but it was a much better feeling than in the past. Is there a process or something that you look at that, the way that you do it, to make sure that you're able to still kind of have those friendships, if you will, or connections down the road?
It all depends.
Yeah.
For me, I always, as an operator, I had zero tolerance areas, because I don't go to jail for anyone. So I don't do fraud. Yeah. I don't, I have a joke in my shop, and I always have, it's like, I wear orange, but not that shade. And I don't do stripes this way.
That's right.
So if you're going to do something that's immoral and illegal, then I don't mind firing you. I can do it easily. If you're doing something that is against other people in a way under a business name that I'm associated with, that we know is inappropriate, I have no problems. And I don't want to be friends afterwards. Yeah. Because that was a moral decision that you made, and this is my stance on it. So when it comes to integrity, don't think twice about it. And, being in healthcare, where things can be life or death really quickly, and you have to hold people accountable. Yes, I really didn't have a problem with that then. But I have had people that was heart-wrenching for me. I probably tried to help them find another job just because of how I felt about them as a person. Yeah. But I would say that I don't look at all terminations the same.
Yeah, I love it. If it's warranted and it's valid, it's an action, it's a consequence of what the behavior was.
Especially if I've communicated it, Candy. If I've been clear, if there's a policy there and we've been clear in the communication, then I probably would be a little more cut and dry about it.
Yeah. A lot of people think that in order to have a certain level of success, that you have to be cutthroat. You have to have a cutthroat approach. And I know that has not been your approach to business and success. Can you share a little bit about how you view it and what your approach has been?
Yeah, that's never really worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm much more of a collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
Cutthroat to me sort of comes back to bite you at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I totally believe that what goes around comes around,
Mm-hmm.
and how you treat people will come back to you. So I have never approached business any differently than I have relationships, from that standpoint that I want to move with integrity, I want to move with honesty. You learn in business that you can't tell everybody everything you know. You can't share your vision with everybody.
Oh, yes.
Everybody's not in there for you. That was the biggest lesson that I learned, Candy, in business, was because I have 5 uncles, my dad, 3 brothers. So I was always insulated from that perspective. And so having that male perspective on my life, I sort of went into business thinking and went into the world thinking that people were for me. You know what I mean? That everybody's, on your team or supporting you or rah-rah behind you. And then I learned that some of those rahs had a knife in their hand.
Yeah.
And I had to learn it fast, to the point that I had the conversation with my dad. I told my dad, I said, Dad, you taught me to be a good girl. You taught me to be polite. You taught me to say the right things, but you didn't teach me to fight. So now I'm here and I feel like I've got to fight for myself, and you didn't teach me to do that. He said, I didn't have to. You know how. He said, it's automatic. And it was, in a lot of ways. I think what I wanted was permission to do that. So I don't think you have to be cutthroat to protect yourself, protect your business, or, to fight for what you believe in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When you said about not everyone's for you, I often think like your idea, like whether it's to start a bit, whatever it is, like whatever goal, dream, it could be to, exit your business and just go live at the beach or start your family, whatever it is. Yeah. Right. Whatever it is, I feel like those dreams are so critical in their infancy. And I see so many people going out and announcing what it is that they want to do, when really what you should do is talk less and do more. Right? Like, I think that fragile infant of an idea is the most critical when somebody comes along and says, who do you think you are? You can't do that. And then you start to second guess yourself.
Absolutely.
And so like most people aren't like us that use that as fuel. Like that's the best thing for me, is there's someone to tell me I can't do it. Because then I'm like, oh great, now I got to go do this just to prove you wrong.
Exactly. And faster. I got to do it faster.
Yes, exactly. I got to do this in 30 days now. So it's like, yeah, I totally, but some people that'll help, that'll make them spiral. They won't do it. And so I think it's more important to keep that close to your heart, go get the results, and then talk about your results once you've actually accomplished it.
Exactly.
So I love that. Can you talk about, obviously you're in healthcare, you're doing all of this, you had all of this business experience, you're working at, the college and teaching, and then all of a sudden, Dress for Success comes along and says, come run all of this for us. Going into the nonprofit sector, how was that different and yet similar? Because we obviously share this in common too with having nonprofit experience. There's a lot of similarities in nonprofit and business. The only difference is what you do with the net operating income. Like that's it.
That's the only difference.
That's the only difference. It's not going into your pocket. It's going back into programs. But everything else, the market, like it's so hard, but yet so beautiful. How has it been stepping into that role?
It's one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I think it really caused me to grow and to expand my thought processes, because I was one of those people in business that thought smaller nonprofits could be poorly run, because they can be. If we're leading, I worked in nonprofits, but I worked in hospital systems. And what we learned there though was no margin, no mission. And it applies today to what I'm doing. So no matter how passionate I am, which I am, if I can't keep the doors open, if I can't meet the needs of the people from a salary perspective, for the people that work for us, and then for the people that we serve, then I can just stay home. And that's so evident. But what I learned the quickest in nonprofit was pace, because I come at it at a really, I'm sort of high strung, and get it done fast and you know move. And I've had to really pull back and slow down. And also, I think it might be Phoenix too. Phoenix run. It's we're a little more laid back on the West Coast than the East Coast.
Sure.
You're East Coaster, and I think that I had to come in and really be intentional about listening and reflecting and slowing my pace down just a little bit. But I do agree that business is business to me. So I don't run a nonprofit any differently than I would run a for-profit business because we need the profit, right?
Need it.
It's all about, that at the end of the day and whether you break even, how you roll it back into operations. But one of the things I get asked a lot about is fundraising. And so to me, when it comes to fundraising, it's the same as raising capital.
Yes, it is.
Because you know how you can go out on that first round, that first capital raise on the first round, and you can talk about your vision and all you want to do, and this is going to be wonderful. And you might get some money on the first round. Go back the second round with that and see what you get.
Yeah.
Because people want results at that point.
Yep.
They want to know, did you have an impact? What the results were? How much did you make? What's my return on investment? And people who are giving, philanthropists at the same time, they still want to know what the return was and what kind of impact did I have in my community and what I'm passionate about. And I think it's important as nonprofit leaders that we come to the table with the same type of information that we would if we were raising capital in a for-profit business.
I love it. That's a beautiful way that analogy I've never heard, but it's 100% on point. You can get someone so excited of the vision of your company.
Exactly.
Or the vision of the nonprofit and the good you're going to do. But when you want to come back for that second round, you better show them what you did with that first money. Because, I see it all the time. I have investors even come to me for their, startup, and they're all excited on the vision, but maybe they haven't done it before. And I look at it as it's more of a donation. But then it's like, well, what is this donation going to do? I can go and invest this into a nonprofit that's going to be able to actually do good work. At the end of it, you said it way better than I did. No margin, no mission. I say no money, no mission.
I know, really. It's the same thing. Margin and money is the same thing. And when somebody comes to you with their dream and vision, and potential, but you know what potential means, right? It means they haven't done it
That's
yet.
right. It is potential.
So you come through after a few years, you got to have a little more than, vision and some potential.
Yeah.
We got to, rubber has to meet the road. We got to do the work.
It's so, and you guys are doing the work. You're doing the work with everything that you're doing in the programs. And obviously I'm a supporter, I'm a donor, I'm an advocate. So I love what you're doing. And so can you maybe share, because I don't think people really know all of the things that Dress for Success does and how this, even if someone's listening, like, oh, how does this tie to business? Like, oh my gosh, what you're developing in people and how you're investing in people to really get them out of the situations. Like when I was at your event and I heard, someone, she was in jail and she had these babies and she got her babies back. And like now she started her business and she has a job and she went to school. And it's just like you're really investing, not just now, but in future generations. And you're breaking these generational curses, if you will, that people. So tell us a little bit about how you're investing in people through Dress for Success.
And you really said it for me, Candy, and you asked earlier why I decided to do this. And when I look at the statistics, 70% of the poor in America, in our country, are women and children. 70%. So we're here, 1.6 million people here in our area, somewhere around in there. 18% are below the poverty line, and they're women. So when we look at the playing field, we know that it's not level. And I think those are that's what fuels me to create programs that not just to say, it can't be a vanity project, Candy, just that Tamala just feels good because this is what she's doing for people.
Right.
We've got to make a difference. So when we look at the numbers like that, we have to put together programs that will enhance skills that women already have. So our education program, Educate Her, that we started last year, we have 76 women who are matriculating through our community colleges, through ASU, to upskill and reskill so that they can earn a livable wage. So what's the minimum wage is $15 or so around in there, but the poverty line here is a little over $15,000 a year for one person. So you start adding people to that and try to live on that salary. We know what the housing prices look like here.
Yeah.
So if you make $1,000 a week and your rent's $1,000 or more, you know, you're already behind the 8 ball before you can even get started. So what we're looking at is programs that women can come out making a livable wage, and industries that are non-traditional that we can get women into. And some of that will be their own businesses, and giving them the acumen to do that, and the space and the safety to, you know, to learn as much as possible. So through our workforce development, career placement, job skills, education, and now we're launching Bank on Arizona so that we can assist women. Do you know there's so many women and women of color in this state that don't have bank accounts because they feel they can't get one.
Wow.
So they go to predatory lending and predatory banks and online banks for their banking. So when's the last time you bought a house, got a mortgage without a bank account? Can't do it.
Never.
Because you can't do it.
Wow.
So if we continue, we will never break the cycle of poverty if we are not intentional about steps to get there. So if we tell people, oh, well, we'll just put your money on a card and we'll just give you this card and you can use it as you need it. You don't have to have a bank account. Are we breaking the cycle of poverty? Or are we feeding poverty?
Right.
Feeding. You know, I know that's, you know, using that word, but you know what I mean? Or are we perpetuating poverty? And so I think that when we look at it that way, we have to look at the policies that are governing how we work with the poor, how we empower people to get out of those situations, and really how we undergird unemployed and underemployed, you know, women and teens in this community.
Do you think that that's intentional, or do you think it's just ignorance that they put it on a card? We all know, like, because obviously with my background, people will be more than 20%. I think it's 27%. People will spend more, 27% on a card than they will if they have to write a check or pay cash. Yeah, cash is like the king. So it's like, if they're doing that, do you think they're trying to create a perpetual cycle? Because obviously you and I, if we could stroke a pen, we would change this tomorrow.
Wouldn't we?
Because we have all the data to support that this is a bad decision, so let's change it. You got to wonder, at least I do. Maybe I'm a little skeptic.
And you have me on tape right now. So.
We'll cut this out.
But I think when we perpetuate poverty, what we're doing, though, is we're ensuring, though, that we have service jobs filled, and think about our own creature comforts.
Yeah.
So you're going to always push people or keep people in certain level jobs, because when they rise above that and they can make more, then what does that do? It takes them out of those roles. You know, there's a reason that women bore the brunt of this pandemic, because we were working 80% of the service jobs. So we're on the front lines, people of color, you know, bus drivers, healthcare workers, maintenance workers, housekeepers in hotels and all of that. That's who died first, because you can't stay at home. You can't mask up and stay at home in those type of jobs. You have to go because you may not have vacation time. You may not have insurance any other way. So what do? You go to work. So when you say, is it intentional? I don't know if it's intentional, but I think it is habitual. I think it's a habit that we've had, you know, for a long time.
If you could wave a magic wand, if I could give you a magic wand right now, and you're like, you could wave and just create one thing to stop perpetuating the level of poverty, and you could create something or do something, or would it be information? Would it be knowledge? Would it be like, what do you think is at the root that if we could only do one thing for people to help them break the poverty cycle and realize the opportunity that exists for them, what do you think they really need?
Hope.
Hope.
I think that's what, you know, so many need hope that they can do something different, that there is something different, you know, and so it's easy to come to it with a broad brush and assume that everybody has the same lived experience that we have. And when you really look at it closely, you realize that everybody doesn't. One of the reasons we went after non-traditional industries for women, one of the ones we identified was IT. And we did a survey and asked women, what do you know about information systems or programming or anything like that. I didn't know there were jobs for me there.
Wow.
Didn't know that was something I could even consider.
Mhm.
Now we have women going through programs making straight A's, can come out making $80,000 a year.
Wow.
Based about, you know, as opposed to minimum wage or even trying to get a job.
Yeah.
Because somebody said, oh no, this is something you can do,
Wow.
that you're able to do. So I think a lot of times we've got to give hope to people and we've got to show them a different pathway. And then what we have to do is acknowledge the fact that poor people have gifts too.
Mhm.
How often do we ask someone that we feel is less fortunate than us, so what are your gifts and talents?
Mhm.
What do you like to do? We don't ask. We assume that they need us to tell them, well, you'd be really good at this.
Yeah.
You know, and we see these amazing women, you know, coming out with business ideas, starting their businesses, growing in their careers. It doesn't have anything to do with whether we tell them they can do it or not. It's just the hope and the confidence that they need, instilling that in them to get to the point that they can do it. Just giving them a chance.
I love that hope.
Yeah.
Is there a success story, or I'm sure I know there are a lot, but is there one that just pops into your mind that you can share with us just to show the transformation of what the programs do for the people that get in them?
And I want to do this without crying and messing up my makeup. So there's so many, Candy, and I know that you've witnessed a lot of that. And we were just talking today. There's two I'm thinking of, but you know, we often support people coming out of the justice system. We had a gentleman, so we are launching our tailor-made for men.
Oh, great!
So that we're able to start to we're back at supporting men 2 days a week by appointment only. This gentleman came in, and we suited him. We had the stylist there to assist him and everything. When he turned and looked at himself in the mirror, he started to cry. He was 62 years old and he had never seen himself in a suit. Wow. So sometimes we've got to show people that there's another way. He'd never seen himself in that light. Mm-hmm. So, you know, with that comes some confidence that you would normally have. We had another woman that was going through the program. And when she started, she'd applied for a job. She was making minimum wage, and I won't say the name of the company. She'd applied for a job in business, a little more of a business manager type role. And they denied her the job, said she didn't have enough experience. She got into the program, which was a business program that she's been in. She went back, she talked to the supervisor. The supervisor reached out to our manager to talk to her about the program that she was in. Within a few months, they gave her that job, $58,000 a year.
Oh my gosh.
She's making minimum wage. I think she's now probably making 64. That completely changes the trajectory of that woman's life and her children's lives. But they just needed to know that someone was there with her, you know, coaching her through, and that support. So what does that mean, Candy? She had it all along. She had the skills and the talent to do the job all along, but she was denied it because she didn't have, you know, that advocate in there to speak on her behalf. So I think the more of that we can do, I think it changes things. It's going to change our community because, you know, when women come off of assistance, we're talking about breaking the cycle of poverty. When women come off of assistance, that enhances, you know, that is a positive for the whole community.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, that's $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 in taxes that we pay. It comes back into the community.
Yeah.
So I think when we look at it, it has to be beyond who can we help? You know, just stroking a check. But let's look at how we can impact our entire community systematically.
Yeah. And I love how you said, like, sometimes you just need permission. Like, she had it all along. She just needed somebody else to believe that she had it. And I find that women more so than men need that. It's like we sometimes, and I believe men need it too, but I feel like women, for some reason, we need it more.
We second guess ourselves.
We do.
You know, there's a statistic out there that men will go on a job search and see a job, and they're like, they might have 50% of the skills. They'll apply every time. A woman will go out and look at the same job, and if she doesn't have one of the skills, she will not apply.
Wow. You know, it's interesting. I was interviewing someone and he was talking about how men will just assume that they have all of the things. And it was very similar to what you just said. They assume that like everything is there and they can handle this. And women go into it assuming that we don't.
That we can't.
And that's why I think it's so we can learn so much from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like I believe women can learn a lot from men. Men can learn a lot from us with our empathy and the way we connect with people. So I think it's like it's a beautiful connection.
It is.
When we can, again, evaluate our strengths and our weaknesses and adopt the others in order to better perform. And so I love what you're doing, you know, just with the programs and for these women, because I see it create such ripple effects. It is not just for that one person.
Exactly.
It literally is helping dozens, if not hundreds of people just by that one person being affected, because it's now her kids and their aunts and their uncles and their community. And so I just think that it's a beautiful thing and it's so needed. And I do want to touch just one topic before we wrap, because we are hearing so much in the news cycle and in the business space about equity and inclusion and how important it is. Mm-hmm. And I think this is something that, even though it's not been a talking point before, you have always mastered this in being able to have equity and to have inclusion in your businesses and in Dress for Success, and to be able to talk about that. Is there something that we can do in the business space to be better at doing this that you have found that's worked really well?
Well, you know, there's a lot of data to support that businesses with diversity have healthier bottom lines. You know, because of what collective thought that comes to the table when you have diversity. I think what we often do is we trip up on whether that means a woman or whether it means race. Mm-hmm. And then we get stuck on who's at the table, that sort of thing, and how we do that. I do think that there's a difference between equity and, you know, equality. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we feel like, oh, well, we've got 3 women in leadership, so that ought to be enough. We have 3. So of course we're inclusive, but do those 3 women have the same access as everybody else on the team? And I think that's when we have to look at it. Or, you know, there's something to be said, Candy, for equipping people to do a certain job. So we talk about equality. And so let's say we're running a race and I say, everybody, we're going to come out, we're going to run a race, and I'm going to give everybody a pair of tennis shoes. Everybody's got sneakers, but we're going to run these 4 laps. And, you know, we're going to see who wins. Well, I gave everybody sneakers, so that's equality, right? And we're all running the same time. But I didn't take into the fact that you wear a 7 and I gave you a 10. So a lot of times we broad brush and we feel like, oh, well, we've provided the opportunity. But I think we have to go a step further. And did we really provide an opportunity? Or did we provide access without the password? And that's something that, you know, that I have focused in on, because a lot of times as women in business, we get to the table, you know, we're there, we're a part, we're feeling really good about being included. But they have the password. You just have access.
Oh my God, I've never had anyone explain it like that before.
So we have, you know, so we have to think about that when we're talking about inclusion. So some people always talk about have a seat at the table. I said, okay, I'll take the seat at the table, but what I really want is a checkbook, because that's where the decisions come from, right? So just having us at the table, what does that mean if we're not making any decisions?
So good. You know, it's so weird. What just came into my mind is I just realized that I've been like, I could not figure out how many times I've been included in things before, right? Either there's a bunch of guys and I'm like the female speaker in business, or a company that I was consulting for. This is what came into my mind. And I remember thinking, okay, wait, I'm a female. I'm here with all these guys, but I almost feel like I didn't get the right to make the same level of decisions as the bros club. Does that make sense? And I never quite I couldn't quite like rectify that in my mind. Well, okay, but they hired me and I'm here. but it's like, they're just always felt, and I never wanted to feel like lack. So I never wanted to look at it in a negative way. But I think you just so beautifully explained what I've experienced before, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So that is the equity piece.
Because, and as a Black woman, I've often been at the table.
Yeah.
Because they needed me at the table because, I'm what they call a twofer. So you have a minority and a woman at the same time. So we check a whole lot of boxes when I come in, right?
Right.
But if I'm only there, but you know what? I will do that, Candy, at times. And I know there have been times that I've done it and I knew what was going on. Just like you're saying, after you get in, you realize like, wait a minute, realize what was going on. But guess what? If that opens the door for someone else to come in behind me, then I'm going to get in there. And by the time I leave, though, I'll be more than a minority and more than a woman. I'm going to be added value to whatever you're doing in this business. And you'll know when I leave.
Yeah.
But it opens the door for more women to come in, more people of color to get there. And I think the one thing that we don't do well as women, when you're talking about women in business, we don't refer each other. We don't refer women.
Yeah.
And if we don't do it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, if something comes up, I'm going to refer, the women that I'm in business with and I'm working with first.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another way that we can include more women in what we do. We can include more people of color in what we do. We have to be intentional about it. It's not, we won't just automatically do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think we have to really be intentional about what we're doing and focused on it.
Yeah. And I think if we apply that into every area of life, be intentional about what you're doing, it's only going to pay dividends.
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Amen to that. Yeah. And I love how you said, like, we do need to, because I think there's almost this thing like where you want people to do well, but you don't want them to do better than you. Right. Yes. I felt that a lot of times. I felt that in my life. Like, oh, we want to include you. But then the second you're actually doing better than that person, they're like, oh no, we don't want you to do that. Exactly. And I think if we as women really embody the belief that we shine brighter together as opposed to individually, and we don't see other people as competition, but inspiration, that I think that just the world will be better as more women shine.
I agree. We open the door wider and the women that we empower and women who are unemployed and underemployed, we open the door wider. We can reach back and bring more women through because the need's there. I
love it. Please tell everyone, where can they find out more about your work, what you're doing? We're going to drop all the information in the show notes, but let them know how they can find out more.
Absolutely. dfsphoenix.org. And they can go on our website. There's they can look at how to give, how to volunteer, what our upcoming events are, how to get involved, and just what we're doing in the community.
I love it. And for female business owners out there, I think a great way to give back is go to their website. They have an empower her and an educate her. I don't know what I'm involved, but I'm involved in something. Just do the biggest box there. You can do a monthly contribution. It's a tax deduction, and you can invest in other women entrepreneurs and women that are currently in the below the poverty line, to really give them an opportunity and a hand up, not a hand out, but a hand up to be able to just see the hope and what's really available to them. So we're going to drop it below. I want to encourage you to go there. Thank you so much I know you're so busy. Thank you for coming and spending this time with me today. It was so good seeing you.
It's my pleasure. Most fun I've had all day. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.